talk about my great grandfather, great grandfather, who came to Michigan in the 1830s. And my great grandfather first went to Isle Royal, Michigan, and was agent and manager of a copper mining company. But he stayed there for 18 months, but he finally had to come back because the company that he was working for didn't have any money. And the fact is, he didn't get paid for all the time that he spent up there in the copper country. He came back to southern Michigan, Liberty, in Jackson County, and he in 1855 he came to, and one son I think came to Traverse City. They walked up here on the old Indian Trail, and took them 5 days, according to the records. And they liked it so well up here that they decided to move up here. And they went back to Jackson County, and then they came back up here in 1856 and settled with his 2 sons. And they each homesteaded 160 acres. All 3 of them, each one had 160 acres on the peninsula. And they cleared the trees and set some apple trees out, for one thing. And I don't know what else they did, but they just a kind of a general farm type thing. And then when the Civil War started, the one son, Francis Fowler, Curtis Fowler was the first one from the Traverse City area, one of the first to join a militia down by Detroit, and served in the Army, and was wounded in the first battle of Bull Run. And his brother Francis, who was a couple years older, decided that somebody in the family should serve in the Civil War. And so he went looking for a militia to join, and he ended up in Michigan with the militia. And he was killed in the second battle of Bull Run. And after the war, or at least after Curtis got home, well, he got married to a lady by the name of Margaret Patterson, who was from Ireland. And they had 6 girls and 2 boys. And my grandmother Ethelyn was one of the girls, and she married Alec Holman, who was from Canada at the time, had come over to visit his 2 aunts that were here. And one of them was married to a Buchan, and the other was married to a Carroll. That's where Tim Carroll comes in, because it was his great-grandfather. And this is a picture of my great-grandfather, Curtis Fowler Sr., and this is the log house he had on Center Road when he first got here. And he was married to Louisa Selden. And they got married in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And they had 2 sons, and this was Francis, the one he got killed in the Civil War, Second Battle of Bull Run. And this is Curtis Jr. Of course, he looks pretty old there, but he was wounded in the first Battle of Bull Run. He serving for 3 months and came home and settled down here. And this, where we live in now, is part of his original farm. And where I was born up on Center Road was a part of Curtis Senior's farm. They each had 160 acres they homesteaded. And they homesteaded in 1855, or they came here in 1855 and then homesteaded here in 1856. And after they lived on the land for 5 years, they owned it. I don't know what it cost them, but it did cost them some, very little, actually. But then, after Francis was killed in the Civil War, why, the farm got sold off to different people. And now part of it is where the Old Mission Peninsula School is now, and then the St. Joseph Cemetery is in that same 160. And this cabin was on right across the road from the Catholic Cemetery on Center Road. And I think he died in 1887 or something like that. I don't remember for sure. And I don't think it says on here. Oh, Louisa Sullivan died in 1887, and Curtis Sr. died 1891. That's what says on the back of this picture. And Louisa Sullivan Fowler was the daughter of Samuel Sullivan, who was a judge in Jackson County. That's on the note. Yeah. And Curtis was also a probate judge at Grand Traverse County for 14 years, from 1858 to 1872, I think it was. And Curtis Jr. was Justice of the Peace, and also had a post. Curtis Sr. had a post office at his home in 1850s or 60s or whatever. And, they call it the Mapleton Post Office. I don't know if it was a regular U.S. post office or just a post office where people brought their mail to be shipped out and received. So, but anyway, the boys farmed and they had apples, and I don't think that they had any cherries until the 1890s. But some of the younger ones raised cherries on the peninsula. Mostly sweet cherries are shipped in Chicago by boat out of Ball's Harbor. And then after my grandfather, Holman, got 40 acres of the original farm of my great-grandfathers. And they had some cows and pigs and chickens and what have you, and raised corn. And I don't know if they got a picture of that corn they raised. Maybe she did. Yeah. But anyway, my grandfather Holman used to raise peach trees for Paulie's Nursery down in Hart. It's planted the pits, I guess, and when they got big enough, they pulled them up and had peach trees. So. And I can remember my dad saying that when my grandfather was going to raise another bunch of peach trees that who are you gonna get to Holman? My dad said, he said, Grandpa said, well, you are. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, I'll leave home before I pull any more peach trees. But, so I guess I didn't raise any more. Here. You can cut you off. This is a picture of the peach trees that they're hoeing around, and they grew for Holly's nursery. And there was a Matthew Zulick, Harry Christopher, Tom Valley, which was my dad's cousin, my dad, and Ed Hasley, and then my grandfather. Ed Hasley was married into the Hawley family. So he was there looking after the peach trees, I guess. And this postcard here was my grandfather, Alec Holman, and Bethlehem Fowler, my grandmother. And this was the corn that they raised up here. I had a picture of this pretty. Grandfather was about 6 feet tall, and that's 2 or 3 feet above his head. So, and this picture here is my mother and my father. This was in 1954, the year that Georgia and I got married. Well, that was, and my dad worked the farm with cows and pigs and a couple of horses and chickens and dog and I don't know what, cats probably. And he not only worked the farm, he worked out quite a bit. He took any kind of a job he could get during the Depression when I was born in 1933 during the Depression, and my dad was working all kinds of jobs whenever he could get to keep the family going. And after the 1941, when the war started, he worked at construction jobs here and there and all. And then after the war, we started setting out a few more cherries. We had several acres, but not a big farm. It was a small farm, but it was a pretty good farm, and it still is today for raising cherries. One of the best areas in the United States to grow cherries is Old Mission Peninsula. Okay, as far as I can remember that the Old Mission Women's Club had the old hall down there at Old Mission was originally the Maccabees Hall, and it sat idle for a good number of years. And I guess some of the guys used to go down there and play basketball upstairs. It kind of had a basketball court up there. It wasn't a very big one. But anyway, the women's club had it. And they turned it over to the American Legion, Post 399. And we had several meetings for several years there. The American Legion didn't have very many members, so we had a lot of associated members. We used to come down there and play cards, and we had a cook and cooked a meal every meeting, and that's one reason we had associated members, because we couldn't afford to keep up the hall and pay the light bills and heating bill and what have you. I didn't think there was any taxes on it as far as property taxes at that time. And it ended up that it burned down, and we had to rebuild into a new building, which is standing today in the same spot. And then the post office, the Old Mission grocery store, and for some reason, it was, I think that would do with the rent. They discontinued the post office at the store, and Legion built a little addition onto the new building, and the post office is now in that new building. Okay. Now, on the peninsula, there was, I think, 7 one-room or 2-room schools out there. And it started at near town, McKinley, and there was Stony Beach. There was a school at Archie one time. And there's Maple Grove, Mapleton, Ogdenburg, and Bars Harbor, and Old Mission. And I think I included all 7 of them. And this is a picture of some of the students at the Mapleton School, which later years burned down. This was the full picture of the school. This is it burned down in 1990. It was after the consolidation of the schools in 57, I think it was, 1957. They consolidated. Now before that, some of the smaller schools were kind of put together, like McKinley and Stony Beach. But in 1957, Peninsula schools were all consolidated into one, the Old Mission Peninsula School, which is on what we used to call Sweet Cross Road. Now it's the Island View Road. And it served still going today. Now, I went to Mapleton School when I was up to the 6th grade. My dad has gone to that school, and he only went to the 8th grade, and that was all the schooling he got. And my grandmother, before me, or before my dad, she went to school there too. And this picture here got my dad in it, and this is about early 1900s. I think this was 1911 on it. So, and this was a book, census book that listed all the pupils in the Mapleton School back 1913 and 1912, and then all the, it says on this book, the school district, Peninsula Township, number 5. I guess that's how they listed them in numbered schools. But anyway, this is a ledger that my great-grandfather had back in the, well, it starts out 1897, and it goes on for several years. But there's a James Hawkins that evidently worked for one day mowing and cutting and raking. It must have been probably the hay at $1 he paid him. And there's another one on September 6th,